bushwhacks were some of the worst days I've ever had in the mountains, or life, really.
Whereas Panther Mountain is totally opposite. It's a mountain on top of a crater.
I think the weather challenges on this incident were particularly difficult.
It was really the development of New York State. Catskills were responsible.
Now you're listening to Inside the Line, the Catskill Mountains Podcast.
Nice. We'll talk about that later. So welcome to episode 151. Tonight, geologist Charles Straeten joins us tonight, and we're going to talk about, of course, geology in the Catskills. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. I've been waiting for this for a long time. Charles and I, or AKA Chuck and I, have been in talks for a very long time. My friend Carl Backus, who's previously on the podcast, geologist Carl Backus, joined me and introduced me to Charles, aka Chuck, and it's been a long time coming. So I've been waiting for this for a while. So welcome to episode 151. So we had recently a winner to the tickets to see Jamie's film Variable. Congratulations to Chrissy G, but unfortunately she couldn't attend, so it went to Kate RPB. So congratulations, Kate, on going to see the screening for the Variable. Make sure you say hi to Jamie for me. I'll be at the Hunter one in January, so enjoy it. The film is absolutely phenomenal. Chrissy, if you can go to any other time, I know there's one in New Paltz that you said you wanted to go to, and there's one in Hunter that you can attend. Go to one of those, because I'll be at the Hunter one. So,
and there'll be one in New Paltz at the Rock and Snow Annex. Yeah, great place to buy gently used or really, really abused gear.
Yes. Yeah, I heard about that. I've heard of Rock and Snow has great used gear stuff.
Yeah, Rock and Snow is legendary. Good. Legendary.
I'll have to get down there sometime. I gotta get out west. So, out east. Jesus, what am I talking about? It's been a long day. Not really. Actually, it's been a nice day. I'll talk about that later. So once again, congratulations to Kate. Hope you enjoy the event, because it's going to be phenomenal. Jamie's going to be having a Q&A about it and stuff like that. Woodstock is the event that was sold out. It's going to be awesome. We had a great time talking with Jamie about his stuff, doing the Adirondack 46 and the 3500. It's just, I want to hear more stories about his stuff. It just sounds crazy. And Tad, you're a skier, so you probably have a lot more questions than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I get what they did. I would never, even in my crazy days of skiing, I never would have dreamt of doing what they did, nor see how it could be completed. But kudos to them, man, because to me, that's just totally incomprehensible what they did. The determination, I mean, slogging through that snow, on snowshoes is one thing. Trying to go up there on skis and then ski down it is just completely different. My hat's off to them.
Yeah, the film shows it, and like you said, doing snowshoes is one thing, but like going up in the skis and their ski boots that I saw, I was like, what the hell is wrong with these guys?
Yeah, sometimes when you're out bushwhacking and you need to go under something and you duck down, and then your pack catches on it, right? As you're ducking under a tree branch or something else, or going under blowdown, you're trying to get under it, so you're bending down, but the top of your pack gets caught up on it. Could you imagine having skis strapped, right? I mean, so what do? You have to take them off when you need to go under stuff like that? Or if you're skiing and you get to something like that, you have to take them off, put them on. It's just like a constant slog to get up there with stuff like that. And then when you start to head downhill, I mean, sometimes there's not a lot of snow cover, or like when I was out hiking this weekend, there was plenty of snow cover, but there's still spots where you're punching through and you're not seeing that blowdown that's, inches above the ground, but under the snow. So if you're skiing down with skis, you're going to hit that, not knowing it's there. Are your skis going to submarine and go under it? No, this is the stuff they're constantly dealing with the whole way down. So it's very dangerous. And again, as much as crazy stuff I did, 30 plus years ago as a skier, I just don't imagine, and I skied in the Catskills, but we wouldn't go to the top of the mountains. We would do these open, not clear cut areas, but where there wasn't a lot of blowdown and underbrush. Those are the areas that we would ski, and they were very, easy to ski for us compared to what, Jamie and Julie and Doug and now others. I saw somebody up on Bear Pen when I was there a couple of weeks ago had skied.
His name. He's got to tag us in some of those. I gotta mention his. I'll look it up while we're doing this.
And then there was a fellow this weekend I saw. His name was McKinley. That's how he introduced himself. Who was on skis, had done East Rusk. I met him at the top of Hunter, and then he was on his way over to Southwest Hunter.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy that people are doing this with once again, with what we talked about. Like you said, frickin' just even bushwhacking, dipping below some sagging trees that have amounts of like snow on them. And you're just like, God damn, this sucks. Just imagine coming down that.
Yeah. So you really have to want it to do it. But it seems like this is like going to take off, and a lot of people are going to do it. So is this going to be like with the trailless mountains, the DEC is going to get all wound up because people are skiing these summits? Is the DEC going to say we need to put chairlifts in? Is that what's coming?
Chairlifts every summit.
Yeah. Is the Wyndham Mountain Club going to want to fly people to these summits via helicopter so they can ski them? Is this like the new thing?
This is going to be the new
hope
thing.
Not. Yeah.
Thanks, Jamie and Julie, for not tagging us. So whatever. So, I hate to go from this positive story to what's kind of happening. The biggest story that we have going on is that the search for the 22-year-old missing guy in the Adirondacks has shifted to a recovery. Now, like 6-7 days ago, Leo DeFore was missing up in the Adirondacks, up in Island Mountain. And I gotta admit, talking from all my friends that have been up there, even in the summer, that's a tough hike. It's 9 miles to the top of the mountain. So 18 miles round trip. And they said it's brutal in the summer. So being in the winter, it's absolutely even more crazier. And he's 22 years old. He was missing more than a week ago as of today. And they have talked about, the forest rangers authorities have said heavy snow, cold temperatures has made it essentially impossible. The guy from Quebec was they think that he was on Island Mountain on November 29th. They found a water bottle. That was the last clue that they had. And they have found absolutely nothing since then. And they have done they said that they have done over 400 miles of 400 miles, right, of searching. And 60 rangers have been searching over the area, and they have found absolutely nothing. So they have said that they have scaled back, and they have limited resources, of course, of this area, because of the insane weather conditions. Now, if you think that, hiking, 3-4 miles up to the summit of Slide Mountain or something, breaking trail is bad, but imagine hiking 9 miles up to a 4,000-foot summit. I remember that Allen, I haven't been up there, but I remember reading that Allen is 3,500 feet elevation gain. And that doesn't start until you're like 6 miles into the hike, probably even more than that. That's brutal. And that's another reason why I won't go into the Adirondacks, because I just want my elevation gain to start right away, like the Catskills and the White Mountains. And, just to think about this in the winter, and with all my friends contacting me saying that this is brutal. And even before, when they started first reporting this, that this guy had no chance. It sucks. It hurts. And it just, to the Rangers out there battling these conditions that they had, I can't say anything but thank you, because it's just been a crazy thing to think about. It's always on your mind. Like, is he alive? Is he, hanging on? And it's tough to, even after 2 days up there, to think that up above tree line and up above these harsh conditions, that anybody could survive. with hypothermia and stuff like that. It's brutal. And, what can you say?
Yeah, it's very sad. It's tough beyond tough for his parents. I can't imagine the position that they're in, and, other family members and those that are close to him. So, the best is to learn from what happened to this fellow. And even though you think you're prepared, you're never really are. It takes a fair amount of luck to get you, out and back on one of those long excursions. So,
yeah. And, you don't, I say this all the time, and not just the Catskills, you don't always need to summit the freaking mountain. If you don't feel something is right, turn around. There's always another day that you can do it.
Yeah, I see in the brief review I did of Allen Mountain, it looks like it's one of these mountains in the ADK above tree line. You get up there, and who knows how well or how poorly he was prepared to get himself off the top. He could have been in whiteout conditions or something and set off to go down, the wrong slope, and just got himself into a really, really bad situation. And so if he summited and then it wasn't able to retrace his footsteps well, Lord knows where he ended up.
Yeah.
Just a horrible thing. You
have winds, cover your tracks when you break trail and stuff like that. Winds, they're constant 30 mile per hour winds can just drift the snow over your tracks. So you don't know where you're going and stuff like that. It's just so many different factors go into what could make this a bad situation. And, it's not just the Adirondacks, the Whites, the Greens, the Catskills as well. It's happened here before. And, we don't have the tree line like they have up in the Adirondacks and White Mountains. But, we do have these factors of extreme weather that could create these possibilities of where you will be stuck in this situation. And it has happened before. And with this situation that the, authorities said that they will be scaling back their rescue mission, but they will be still flying people to the top of the mountain so they can search from the top down. So, that'll be on a limited basis once again, because we have this weather that is absolutely changing every day, each day and every day up here. Today it was 44 freaking degrees and raining at where I lived. Who knows what it was in the Catskills? I read reports from Mo that it was misty and raining up there as well, and it was horrible conditions. So I'm glad I didn't go out. So once again, it's not all worth it. The summit is not worth it. If you have that gut feeling, freaking turn around. It'll be there.
Well, and maybe for our friend Leo, the first mistake he made was actually going that day. Just it might have been the wrong day to go for a hike. And so that's something I carefully look at this past weekend with what the weather forecast was and how much base depth there was up in the Catskills. I did not hike what I thought I was going to hike earlier in the week. I changed my plans, right down to the morning of. But it's you gotta, be looking at the prevailing weather, what the forecast is. I look at color radar to see what's coming in, and be prepared to make a change, which might even include not hiking that day.
Yeah. And, having another person with you, maybe.
Yeah, that surely can help.
Yeah, to make that decision of like, hey, we're halfway up the mountain. This sucks. Let's turn around. Having that 50-50 kind of vision, might persuade you to get off the mountain instead of saying, hey, we're halfway up. We can still make it. And, it sucks. 22 years old, man. That hurts deep.
Well, yeah, I've got a daughter who's 22 and one who's 25. So I can relate with him and his parents.
Yeah. It's
very sad.
Yeah. So thank you to all the rangers who have been involved. The only thing that's crazy that I think about this, and I wish not to bring up like negative stuff, is that, one thing that I found interesting about this is that there was no outside resources that were called into this. like search and rescue teams up in the Adirondacks and stuff like that. If we listen to the podcast over and over again, I always tell of the White Mountains, Green Mountains. They have amazing outside resources, volunteer search and rescue teams, the Pemigewasset team, the Stowe rescue team. I follow them exclusively on Facebook. They're awesome things, but no outside resources were brought into this. And, could that have changed the aspect of this? Ted, I hate to bring this up,
more bodies on the ground involved in the search, that would definitely statistically seem to give you a greater prospect of finding Leo. And there's also other technologies such as drones with the infrared, heat cameras that we remember, months ago now. We had that fellow on who searched for the dog using that infrared technology. So you would seem to think that the DEC would have good and sufficient reason for not calling in volunteers on the one hand, but on the other hand, we hear on the Slasher podcast all the time, and the Whites, they have a number of trained volunteer organizations that are called out. So why is it they didn't do it in the ADK? Why didn't they bring in, one or more than one? Was it just too risky? If it was too risky, then why wasn't it too risky for the Rangers to go out? They went out. So that's
I'm sorry.
It's an interesting question, but if you're the parents, man, that really, really has to baffle you, if not make you mad.
Yeah.
That more resources weren't put out there. And kind of somewhat on a different tone or note is you look at the manhunt search that went into identifying, locating, and finding the fellow that murdered the CEO last week. That was a tremendous display of resources for that. What if more of an effort had been made to find Leo? Certainly in the
22-year-old kid.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's just tough. It's tough to talk about, with having friends up in search and rescue places. I know I've worked with a bunch of Adirondack groups up there with search and rescue, and they're phenomenal people. We've had a bunch of 24-hour searches with them, mock searches, and they know what the hell they're doing. And I hate to be negative, but, bringing in the volunteer resources, New York State, they need to do it a little bit more often. And we need to get those people that are motivated to get up there and kick some ass and to help, because that's what we're here for. That's what I'm here on the search and rescue team. I'm here to help. So once again, to the family, I know they probably don't listen to this, but, our heart breaks for you, and hopefully they will find him later on. And thank you to the Rangers that have been kicking ass up there. It's a truly brutal situation, of course. So once again, the summit isn't everything. Save it for another day. So let's get on to we always talk about I always talk about the Catskill reservoirs, and my friend Todd Bold brought this up to me, and this has been going on for a while. So Ted, are you familiar with the anti-fluoride movement in Yorktown? Did you hear about this?
Well, I get my water from a well, so I'm not a proponent of putting fluoride in water, because you can get it in your toothpaste.
That's right.
Okay. So, and I know dentists who advocate the use of fluoride, and then I know dentists who say it's, unnecessary. And it's amazing. Here we are. I think it's the year 2024 BC. Is it 2024 BC? I mean, I don't know, but why is it we're still arguing whether we should or shouldn't put fluoride in somebody's water? You would think we would know by now. But maybe we spend too much attention on fluoride or no fluoride when we have all these other forever chemicals that, through negligence and carelessness and inadvertence and intentionally, we're putting in our water supplies. Like nearby where I live, we have the Stewart Air Base, Air National Guard, and they have contaminated the local water supplies with the chemicals that they use to put out airplane fires.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and you have to ask yourself, they were surprised by this? Really? They were surprised that you're spraying or hosing down, however you apply these materials, on the tarmac. Why isn't it that something's in place, whether it's just ditches or gutters that drain into a holding tank? So after you use this stuff, you can wash it off the runway and collect it, as opposed to just letting it mix with the regular stormwater and flow into the streams and whatever. And then all these, like we have in the Catskills, we have reservoirs. In communities upstate and throughout the country, we have reservoirs. It's a main way of people getting their public water supply. And apparently at the Stewart Air Force Base, they were not taking measures to protect that from entering the water. So fluoride, yeah, I don't drink public water, so it doesn't bother me, but why are we debating it, and why aren't we focusing more time and energy on getting other chemicals out and preventing them from contaminating our public water supplies?
True. So, like Todd pointed out this as it's been an ongoing discussion that there's a plant north of New York City, a water treatment plant that was bringing, of course, water down from the Catskills that we all know, and it was pumping fluoride into it to strengthen teeth and prevent decay. But it was dripping into the ground where it soon had eaten through the concrete. So this leak in 2012 was followed by repairs and upgrade that took more than a decade. For much of that time in the Yorktown area in the Northwestchester County, drank unfluoridated water. By then, the time the new fluoridation system was up and running in August of 2024. And they had now accustomed to drinking it, and then said it was fluoride, he recalled. But in reviewing in the years, he consisted that my body, my choice. So, wow, it just freaking keeps going on and on. And a month after resuming it, the mayor said to reverse the course, suspending it in September. He cited that an unexpected development, a federal judge in San Francisco, the complete opposite side of the country, had concluded that fluoride, long known to be toxic at a high level, poses an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children, even at amounts of what close is typically added to the nation's drinking water. God damn, this is taking a little turn that I didn't think it would, but this has gone total national debate. So now it's gone over to Trump and Kennedy and stuff like that. It's just going all over the place. And, once we have Kennedy involved, that is involved with New York City, of course, with JFK, it is just hitting nationwide attendance. And, reading some of this, it just gets blown way out of proportion. I don't know. Did you read this? Did you happen to read this, Ted?
No, I didn't dive into it.
Oh my God.
I'm past fluoride.
All right. So we're going to thank you, Todd, for I'm just going to end it here, because some of this stuff that is going on with what the New York Times has said, it's communist plot, blah, blah, blah. We're going to skip politics, but yeah. So we'll keep this ongoing as it comes about. But this, of course, has to do with the Catskill water that comes from the pure, amazing Catskill water. But Tad said once again that you have places up at the Stewart Air Force Base that continues to put out the fires and stuff with some chemicals and stuff that might harm that stuff that is going down into the Catskill Creek and stuff like that. So, the shit that's hitting the fan these days, my God. No comment.
Let's talk about hiking.
We'll get into this.
I view some of our really, really faithful and loyal listeners in their cars driving up to the Catskills, all stoked to hike. All stoked to hike our now soggy snow, probably really, really icy mountains this weekend. Like fluoride? What the fuck?
Yeah.
So,
Thank you, Tad. Thank you, Tad, for going a little explicit right there. Right?
Let's talk about
hit the E on the freaking episode.
Yeah. What do you have in your thermos? Hot cocoa, tea, coffee. I mean, I want to talk about that. What are you carrying in your hydration department for winter hiking?
Myself?
Well, no, I mean, just because you can't like carry water around as readily in the winter as you do in the summer. You bring hard ciders. That's it. Stosh is holding up his like 20. No, it's what is that, like a 48-ounce can?
Isn't that the Julie McGuire way? Julie McGuire just brings a freaking warm brew to the top, and then she gets herself going.
That's actually, if you look at her Instagram account, you'll see that's not true. She does not pack in her beer. According to a recent post that she had on Instagram, she pulls the cold beer out of the canister when she reaches the summit. At least that's what it looks like to me.
There for
yeah. She has her people stocking the canisters with her, select beers, and then they're waiting for her when she gets to the summit. So
that's her motivation to get up to the summit.
Yeah, that's what it takes.
Outrageous. So Julie, tag us in your stuff. Make us popular, please, because you are already popular. So, all right. So thank you to the monthly supporters. Chris Garbian, thank you very much. You've started the sports show. Really appreciate it. Darren White, Vicky for Mike Sawatowski, Jim Kaminsky, Summit Seekers, new monthly participator, Betsy A, Denise, Tom H, Vanessa, Peggy, Jim C, Michael, and Derek. Thank you guys for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. We got a bunch of new people, which is absolutely insane. It's crazy. So hopefully to getting some t-shirts out to you guys really soon. So also the sponsors of the show, Outdoor Chronicles Photography. So capture your love story against breathtaking backdrop with Outdoor Chronicles Photography. Molly specializes in adventure couple photography, and she'll immortalize your moments amidst the stunning landscapes of the Catskills, Adirondack, and White Mountains. So craft timeless images that reflect your unique in nature's grandeur. Embark on an unforgettable photographic journey with Outdoor Chronicles Photography. Don't hesitate to get a hold of Molly on all platforms. Also, discover the wilderness with Trailbound Project. Our expert-led hiking and backpacking education programs offer unparalleled outdoor experiences. Whether you're a beginner or seasoned adventurer, join us for essential skills, exploring stunning trails, and connect with nature. Start with your journey today with Trailbound Project and unlock the wonders of the great outdoors. They teach a lot of stuff from wilderness first aid to wilderness first recovery and stuff like that. Amazing stuff. So, hard ciders mentions. We got a bunch of mentions last minute of this weekend, of course, about the show. If you want to buy us a hard cider, go to the Buy Me a Coffee website that I have on the site that you can it's Buy Me a Coffee, but I changed it to Buy Me a Hard Cider because that's what the show is about. So that can support the show, and it can support the Catskills as well. So Pink Pony 818 to the AT from Hoyt Road to 22 in Pauling. She said she saw nobody but boot tracks. So are you familiar with this area, Ted? I am not, of course. I've never been over there.
No. I didn't look it up, but seems like it could be interesting terrain, particularly this time of year with a little snow on the ground.
Yeah, I'm looking up right now.
Here we go. All trails.
Yeah, all trails. Yeah, look up all trails. Whatever everybody uses.
That's where we get all of our material from, folks. We just Google it. We pull up all trails. we just read it as you would read it on all trails, and every now and then we laugh and joke about it. So,
yeah, I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, I did a big segment of the Taconic Ridge Trail this summer. I will say I enjoyed it. There wasn't as much intense vertical gain, or as our pal says, vertical madness. So that was somewhat of a disappointment. So I would imagine the AT over there is probably the same.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely check it out. Pink Pony, thank you, Tracy, for tagging us. Really appreciate it. Richie's Nature Escapes. My friend Rich Scarponi said he went up on Balsam Lake Mountain, broke out in waist deep snow, and I gotta admit, there's some areas that could be waist deep snow up there.
Maybe in the drifts.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it looked like a phenomenal day being up there. Balsam Lake never disappoints, even with the no views.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a easy to moderate intensity hike, good any time of year, particularly in the winter, Balsam Lake Mountain, it's got to be on the top of the list.
Definitely, I will agree with that one. And even I've been up there through like some treacherous snowstorms after like 2-3 feet of snow, and it's still been enjoyable, even though I'd have to break trail. But the winds are absolutely insane, and it looked like Rich from your pictures. I don't know if you saw pictures, Ted. He didn't approach it from the eastern side of the trail. He approached it from the western side. I'm the Neversink area.
Yeah. Is that what you great day, broke some trail? Well, you're more likely to break trail coming in from that direction because I don't think it's as popular to hike up that way to it. But I've been up that way a few times. It's fun. I like it. Either way, like I said, that's a hike that has got to get high ratings for, depending on your fitness, easy to moderate intensity. Hiking it up from either direction is cool. Coming in from the Beaver Kill side, you got Catskill Brewery on your way home. So yeah, and I have to say, I've said it before, I'll say it again. That drive along the Beaver Kill is a Catskill gem.
Yeah.
You may not get the rock cuts that we hear about later tonight, but it's just a great valley to drive along. The road keeps getting narrower and narrower as you go along into the last 3 miles. Is
whipping and winding, people staring at you.
Yeah, it's a dirt road. A lot of rich people live along that road. So.
Another person I would like to point out that sent me an email, his name is Garrett, and he said he loves the podcast. He would like to add a new thing called post-hike brews and brights, like brews, like you get like bruises on your arms. I think he would like to hear more about the TCT. So, Ted, I think we should do a full through hike of the TCT. I'm looking for the Taconic Trail.
All right, so I might not be up for a through hike of the TCT because it's more mileage in one day than I don't want one day. I don't want one day.
No.
So I still have like the southern third to do. So we can go out and we can knock that down. I would love to do it after a snowfall and do it on some Nordic skis. Because unlike what McGuire and company do in the Catskills, this is very passable on Nordic skis, whether it be traditional or backcountry Nordic ski equipment. But you could, if it's 30 miles, you could knock it off. I'm not going to say easily, but
you could fly it though.
Yeah. I mean, on the downhills, you would, be flying, and there's a lot of moderate uphill. And I think I just ran into one steep uphill grade, nothing really significant, but it's interesting in a number of different respects because you're not as high of an elevation as you are in the Catskills. So you're not going to get into the boreal forests. You're in a different type of rock. It's probably a metamorphic rock as opposed to a sedimentary rock. The rocks, I can't say they're more weathered, but they're a lot more rounded, in my opinion, than in the Catskills. So it's different. And, it's, for the most part, it seems like it's side by side hiking. So if you're with 2, 3, 4 people, you can go shoulder to shoulder for most of the way through it.
I like 1 to 2 is good enough for me. So it'll be you and me. So let's do it.
Yeah. All right.
Or Garrett will join us.
So let's just end the show here and let's just head out now. Let's get this done.
So Garrett, thanks for contacting me. I really appreciate it. So Tom, our good guy who's outdoors, got to Twin Mountain finally after, last a couple weeks ago he went to Westkill because the Roaring Kill wasn't plowed out. So he got to go to Twin, and it looked absolutely fantastic that he enjoyed the snowshoes once again. And I'm so jealous of you guys that got out this weekend. God,
yeah, well, what can I say? It's been last couple weekends have been some awesome hiking in the Catskills, and who knows if we'll get this again this winter season.
I hope
right?
so.
It's we're in a melt thaw cycle now. It's going to freeze up for the coming weekend, so it's going to be hard ice.
It's going to be absolute ice. It's not going to be hard. It's going to be freaking ice.
Yeah, but the beauty of that is if you have the right traction device and you're not punching through that ice layer when you're bushwhacking, you can make some great time. You can go anywhere you want, and getting there is a lot easier than in the summertime. So Stay tuned, folks, because next show, hopefully getting out with Davis this weekend. We haven't decided what we're doing yet, but I hope it's interesting.
It'll be insane. So
yeah.
So once again, thank you everyone who tagged the show. Thank you everyone who has donated and mentioned the show. Really appreciate it, getting the show out there. So rate the show if you can. We got one.
No, it's not if you can.
If you can rate it 5 stars or more.
No, it's just rate the show. No ifs, no buts. Rate the show. Rate it often.
Even if you don't like the old music.
Yeah. We're doing this to boost our egos, so help us out. 5 stars.
I'm working on the music, man. It's my friend's working on the music. It's gonna be epic and hilarious.
Like a 4-string quartet. Is that what it's going to be? Like some classic music,
more Weird Al kind of music.
That's great. So I might have to hand in my resignation.
Exactly. I was just like, so. What are you having to drink, Ted?
So I cracked open a Founders, which apparently is a popular and well-known brewery. Founders Porter roasted. The label says roasted coffee notes, graham cracker sweetness.
Whoa.
So yeah, I'm not, and that's what captivated me when I saw it on the shelf at the beer store. Because I do like porters and I like that roasted porter taste. I didn't really pick up the graham cracker sweetness. I didn't pick up any sweetness at all, but it's a very smooth, very drinkable. It is all gone already porter.
Nice.
So yeah.
Is that Irish?
No, it's domestic.
Okay.
I think they're more well known for their IPA, but I guess when they put their heads to it, they make a nice porter, because this was smooth, and it didn't have any edginess to it, with other flavors or tones coming in at the beginning or the end. You know how some people like they do these reviews on beer with, it had such and such finish and such notes. I mean, I'm not into any of that, but and I didn't pick up on that. It was just like from the sniffing it to sucking it. It was good, right? The whole experience was worth it. So let's finish up this show, because I want to go grab another. So
right. Yeah. Right. So I'm having a 1911 Honeycrisp hard cider. Honeycrisp is so good. I gotta admit, it's just fantastic. So
yeah, I keep meaning to pick up some ciders, but I just, I'm just getting into a little IPA action and some of these dark beers, and it's satisfying.
Todd told me that you should be trying some hard ciders, and I'm guaranteeing your daughters probably should be like saying hard ciders are healthier.
Yeah, well, they brought some home. Yeah, maybe I will. I do note, I sent you that video. The Beer Cave in the Phoenicia Market seems to have a decent selection of hard ciders. But stop in and check it out for yourself.
Yeah, I actually tagged them in our last episode, and it looked pretty phenomenal. So awesome. So previous hikes, I will say that once again, I have done nothing. Sunday, I had to work. Saturday and Sunday, I had to work. And then coming up Monday, up here in the Catskills, it was 42 degrees and raining. So becoming Tuesday with my day off, it was still 40 something degrees and raining. And I did not want to deal with that shit that I dealt with, years ago on Plateau Mountain and everything. So I just stayed home and slept in for a pretty amazing amount of time, and I got some decent sleep for the first time in probably like 6 months.
Wow.
I mean, sometimes I work like 60, 70-hour weeks, so gotta do what you gotta do to have fun, right?
Yeah, well, my daughter, who has a full-time job, works maybe 30, 36 hours a week, and the other one is doing nothing. And I got to work on you to rearrange your life. I'm going to be like your uncle that gives you advice that you don't want. That's going to be my new role in life. So what did I do this weekend?
I'm sorry. Ted, I got to admit, you were probably out and about just ripping it up.
Yeah, so I was planning on doing something different leading into this weekend, but with the forecasted cold temperatures, and it seemed like Friday night the cats got another 4 to maybe 8 inches in places. I decided to go with just kind of a standard hike that's, I think, one of the greatest hikes to do if you have moderate or better fitness. And that's what I call the Hunter Loop, starting off at the end of Straeten Road, hiking up and doing Southwest Hunter, East Rusk, and then back to the start, going in that counterclockwise direction so you avoid that initial uphill on Rusk Mountain. But I meant to calculate it. I think it has one of the longest, if not longest, stretches where you're going to be above 3,000 feet on a trail in the Catskills.
So you're hitting Southwest Hunter above Hunter, and are you staying above 3,000 going to East? Well, you add East Rusk and Rusk.
Yeah. And it's
correct.
And if you talk to Mike Kudish, he'll go into the forestry of that whole segment. Once you're above like 3,000, 2,900, something like that, coming up the Devil's Path off of Straeten, and then around Southwest Hunter, and then down almost down to the spring on what I call the Jeeper Horse Trail. That whole area, you're going through either a boreal or a spruce wood forest, and parts of it are on the edge of that old growth forest that he maps out there. It's just fantastic. I mean, look at some of my Instagram shots. I mean, it's almost like walking through one of those Christmas cards or a Christmas movie with all the snow clinging to the trees. Mm-hmm. And you're up there for mile after mile after mile. So
stop making me so jealous. I'm getting sick and tired of this.
Yeah. So coming out of the parking lot, I was obviously behind a group of other hikers because the trail was really trenched in. I ran into those folks on Southwest Hunter and left them there. They were still hanging out. I moved on. And by the time I got to the Devil's Kitchen, there was one guy ahead of me, well, actually coming in the other directions in snowshoes, and I passed him at or about that point. And then almost to Hunter, I was, other than that one fellow that wasn't trenched out yet. And it was a good hike. It was cold conditions and a lot of fun. So that is I tallied up my tracks. I've done that loop now 10 times.
Wow.
Yeah. So
gridding it?
Well, I've gridded it already. I'm kind of on the second grid now.
Oh.
Yeah. So not that I'm going to go public with that yet, but I did see, of all the people I saw 2 guys out there, bare boots. I tried to subtly let them know that even though you're not punching through a lot, it's cooler if you wore your snowshoes instead of just carrying them around the whole day with you.
They had them on them, though.
Yeah, they had them on their packs, but they didn't have them on their feet. But it wasn't so, I mean, they weren't really chewing up the trail a lot because they were the only two guys I saw all day bare booting it. I did see this guy, McKinley, who was out on skis, backcountry alpine setup for those of you who are interested in that type of stuff. The one thing I did note, because there was a couple times I got behind some other hikers, it occurs to me that some people, when they put on their snowshoes, they don't pay really, really close attention to where the ball of their foot is relative to that pivot point on the platform. So I saw one group of hikers where it was evident that some people, two guys in that group, had their foot really, really far back on that platform, that pivoting platform. And so the problem with that is that when you are going uphill, especially in something that we'll call it technical, because your toes are so far back, the ball of your foot is not on top of the claws that are in that platform. So when you're trying to go up and over one of those technical areas, you're not getting maximum grip. And that's the whole point of having those claws in the snowshoes, is to give you that grip to get up and over, whether it's a little rock outcropping or something like that. You want your foot forward for that. The other thing that I saw was this one fellow in that group had his foot far enough forward that the toes were hitting the front portion of the snowshoe. You know what I'm talking about, Stosh?
Yeah.
He kind of had an overlap there. So the snowshoe couldn't fully swing under his foot. What's the big deal? The big deal is when you lift your foot up, the snowshoe, the back of the shoe can't drop down, which means that if you have any snow on the top of your shoe, it's not sliding off.
Yeah.
And that means every step you take, every time you lift up your feet, particularly in the wetter, heavier snow, that snow is being lifted up by you as opposed to sliding off your shoe. So you're just fatiguing yourself unnecessarily by doing that. So I have, with the snowshoes I use, the MSR Evo Ascents.
That's what I got.
I think it's one of the best, if not the best shoe to wear bushwhacking. But I have it for myself. I know exactly what I need to do to get that right placement of my foot over that pivot point. So I'm getting a lot of bite when I'm going uphill, particularly over technical stuff, but I'm also getting that swing of the shoe. So whatever's on top of it is falling off. So when you're putting those shoes on, don't rush through it. Make sure you get good placement with that. So that's my tip of the night.
Who also did you meet? You met somebody else.
I met a lot of people. Are you talking about Betsy?
Yes.
Yeah, I ran into prior guest Betsy Anderson, show supporter. She was with that group I ran into on Southwest Hunter, and then I bumped into them again on Hunter proper. She seemed like she was having a really, really, really good time, and I'm glad to see that. And hopefully she'll be getting out more and more often this winter.
Good. Yeah, she said she sent me an email where she was just like, somebody was behind me and I kind of heard their voice and I knew who it was, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't know if it was really their voice, like them. And she was just like, "Oh, are you Tad?" And you're like, "No, you. I'm sorry. You were like a dick." You're like, "No, I'm Stash's cousin."
Oh, I wouldn't say I was a dick. No, I said I was Tad's cousin, and
Tad's cousin.
That didn't last long. So
you can't. It's your voice, man. It's
yeah. Oh well.
And once again,
so now, if you come across some older guy hiking in the Catskills that pretends he can't talk, it's me. I'll just try to fake hand signal my way through any encounter with other people on the trail.
How you do? Yeah,
it's me. That's me.
That's horrible.
I'll pretend I've had one cider too many.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It'd be like Chew McGuire. It took like 4 or 5 different IPAs at the top and then ski down. Jesus. I'm jealous. I'm jealous that she can do that because I have like 2 sips of hard cider when I'm at the top, and I'm just like, this is a little bit too much for me. I'm not going to be able to make it down.
Really? Well, I have to say, man, I not that I drink when I'm on the trail, but only twice. Both times, well deserved. Tasted really good.
I think that the 2-3 times that I've had something at the top, one of them was my last finish on Rocky. So and I had to lead the people down. So I'm just like, I'll have a sip or two, but I got to lead you guys down back to safety. So
Yeah.
I would, and then like the rest was like Wittenberg in the winter, which was absolutely insane. And I was like, I'll have a little tiny sip so we don't die.
So who wants a cold beer or cold cider on a super cold winter day hiking? That's when you have a shot of something like a fireball, a real liquor fireball shot, or another shot
on Rocky. That was what I had on Rocky.
Okay.
Well, like 2 or 3 shots actually.
Oh, well, now the truth comes out, folks. Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. Rocking on Rocky.
Rocking on Rocky. That's when we camped overnight and decided that this would be the time. So no, yeah.
Where'd you camp on Rocky?
We didn't. That long. So I made the mistake of my last finish of the 3,500. I made the mistake of going down the ridge, going down into the Neversink
from Rocky.
Instead of going to the Donovan Brook area, that ridge, we just went right down.
Why was it a mistake? Why was it a mistake going straight from Rocky down to the East Branch?
Because that freaking like walk out from the branch of the Neversink was so long and deadly.
It's never ending. But what time of year was it?
Oh, this was beautiful time, October.
Yeah. So I've done that many times. And like in the winter, I'll agree. Sometimes it's just best to retrace from Rocky. Don't go down to the Neversink and try to break trail along the Fisherman's Path because it sucks. That's the only word for it. It sucks. Okay. It's long. It's relentless. And you want that hike to be done miles before it's actually over. But other times it's fantastic. And I'll say the best time to hike from Rocky, East Branch, Fisherman's Path is early in the morning. Do that loop in reverse and hike up the Fisherman's Path in the morning all the way to the turn to go up Rocky, even going deeper than what most people do. There's a great hemlock forest that brings you into the col between Balsam Cap and Rocky. Go up through that. It's kind of magnificent. And then make your turn towards Rocky and then do Rocky, Lone, and back down to the Fisherman's Path. Or if you really want to get out, go over to Lone, go over to Table, because that's easy to get to and you can take the trail out. So
true. Yeah.
Just some alternatives there, but there's between Balsam Cap and Rocky, there's a great spot to camp.
True.
So if you're looking to camp out there, there's a cool spot.
And if you're looking for kind of last second refugee when you're doing that huge loop. So
that was one of the things I was thinking last weekend was to do the 6. And I might be doing it this weekend with Davis. We just got to look at what the surface conditions are going to be like.
The 6, that'll turn into the 25-hour hike because he wants to check out everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've done it a few times in the winter. I've done it fairly quickly. Davis and I, if we want to, we can make time. So
yeah, it'll be tough this weekend, man. Yeah,
it depends how. Again, if you're punching through the snow, then it's going to be a slog. If you're not, it won't be. But we'll come up with something. We'll be safe, relatively speaking.
Well, speaking of safe, I'll bring up the weather forecast for this weekend.
All right,
for you guys.
Let's hear it.
So you're talking about doing the 6, man. I brought up Lone Mountain for the weather forecast. So, as we're talking, we're on Tuesday night and it's been freezing, thawing, just been absolute atrocious weather. And as we go into the weekend, it's getting on Wednesday, we're talking about this 2 days before this releases, 48 degrees of a high. And then it drops down into Thursday of 12 degrees as a high, and then a low of negative 15 on Thursday. So extreme freeze conditions. And then as we go into Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the highest it will be on Sunday will be 36 with clear skies. And then the lowest it will be Friday, will be negative 4. So we're having temperatures differential is extreme, and we're going to have crazy freezing stuff. So crampons, spikes, I don't need it. I don't even know if snowshoes will be needed, but carry them just in case.
Yeah. If you're off trail and
snowshoes, yeah.
If that thick ice cover that's going to form because of all that rain and then the freezing conditions, if that's not thick enough and firm enough, you're going to punch through it in your bare boot. And you might not do it with the snowshoe on. The problem is when you have the snowshoe on and there's that thick ice layer, but you're punching through it, when you take that step forward, every time you pull up your foot, you got to pull it through the ice again.
Yeah.
So that's the really tiring part about walking on or hiking in that type of condition. So,
yeah. And snowshoes, you know what, carrying them isn't a big burden, adds a couple of pounds to your pack, but it's safety measures.
Yeah.
You got to do that. And, just be safe out there this weekend. I'm always thinking of this freeze stuff. I'm always thinking of that time that I hiked up a plateau from the eastern side, and I just dealt with ice from the base to the top. And it was one of the most terrifying moments of my life. I've hiked on glaciers before. I've hiked, up 8,000, 9,000 foot mountains, but I've never been terrified going down a mountain because of how steep it was and how icy it was, even with my full on freaking massive 10-point crampons. I just don't know why. I don't know why that I was just so terrified, and just that could be the time of when you're going up and it's like, oh, I'm fine. These micro spikes, these 12-point crampons are good enough. But then when you look down, you are just like, oh, fuck, this is not good.
Yeah. Well, your body's made to go uphill and climb. All of your articulating joints, your feet, your knees, all of that works very well climbing uphill. But when you go downhill, the articulation of your feet and your knees is different. Mm-hmm. And you don't have the same stability going downhill that you do going uphill. So sometimes you get to those sketchy sections. The best thing to do is turn around, face the mountain. Yeah. Go down facing it like you were going uphill, or better yet, bring a rope with you, right? And then you can just, put out a rope and learn how to do a twin rope, kind of like a rappel, and get yourself down through it. And I did that my first couple of years of winter hiking in the Catskills. I haven't brought the rope out in quite a while, because I, figured out what I can get away with and what I can't. But having the right traction things on your feet is the big thing to it. Don't what are those things called? They have this ones you wear like on sidewalks. You'll see somebody with
tracks.
You'll see somebody occasionally out there with those.
You're like, what the?
Yeah.
But you know what? That's what the podcast is here for. Education. We can bring out microspikes, crampons, hill sounds, goddamn, what's the other one? Hill sounds. Catula. They do that, and then they go up from there on to the more extreme stuff that I used back on plateau, and it's just
I'll say this: if you I have a pair of cheap micro spikes. They're like $20-$25, and then I have the Hill Sound trail crampons. I think they're around $75 now. You can do 95 to 100% of your Catskill hiking with that combination, as well as snowshoes. And if you're going to do a lot of hiking and you're really motivated to finish off your winter list or single seasons or gridding, and you're going to, have to be out on days where maybe you shouldn't be going out. But if you're going to go out on those days, then you pick up a pair of Catula K10s.
Yeah.
And I found that those things, I'm not going to say they're overkill for the Catskills, but they kill it when you got them on and you're going up
When
Plateau,
you need 'em. Yep.
Sugar, Twin, Cornell Crack. Those things will get you up or down.
Yeah. I had some outdoor research, like K10s, I would have to say. I forgot what they're called, but they were absolutely phenomenal. And, I hate to say it, you never know. Like that time I was going up, I was confident as heck. And then like once I reached the summit and I was like, oh shit, what I had to battle going up like was nothing what I feared going down. And, with Plateau, there's not trees all along the way, like on the side. So I'm like, if I fall, what the hell am I going to grab onto? Like, it's those terrifying moments that you're just like, shit.
Yeah. Well, it's, you take shorter steps. And like I said, when you get to those sketch situations, I just turn around. I put my face, my body facing my torso, the front of me is facing the mountain, and I just go down it like I went up.
Yeah.
And it works for me. Knock on wood, I haven't had a bad fall yet. So,
yeah. I mean, well, so be prepared this weekend. Please be prepared. So,
yeah, because we want you to listen to the show next week and the week after that. So don't hurt yourselves out there.
Please. So we'll go last bit of sponsors and then we'll get on to their guest of the night.
Awesome.
Yeah. So discover Camp Catskill in Tannersville, your ultimate hiking store. Find top quality gear, apparel, and accessories for all your outdoor adventures. Our expert staff is to help every hiker from beginner to seasoned pros. We also carry a variety of unique souvenirs and gifts. Visit us online, campcatskill.co, or in the store to gear up for your next journey. Adventure starts at Camp Catskill. Also, discover the beauty of the Catskills, Adirondacks, and Hudson's Valley with scenic route guiding. Our expert guides ensure a safe, unforgettable hiking experience tailored to your skill level. From breathtaking vistas to hidden gems, or if you're peak bagging to just simple day hikes, we'll lead you to the best spots and back. Book your adventure today and explore nature's wonders with scenic route guiding. Check them out on social media platforms. Also, if you mention the podcast, you can get 10% off. Use the amazing code word Mountain Lion. And also, if you want to embark on a transformative journey with another summit, you can join another summit. They are dedicated to serving veterans and first responders with free outdoor activities. Activities like walks in nature, paddling, hiking, and even backpacking. Join a supportive community to rejuvenate in nature's embrace. Experience camaraderie, adventure, and healing at no cost. Take your next step with another summit and ascend to new heights of resilience and joy. Apply today on anothersummit.org. Now I was going to keep on going, Chuck. We haven't.
Oh yeah. Okay.
All right. One second. So let's welcome the guest of the night.
Let's go.
Tonight, geologist Charles Straeten. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, but I go by Chuck.
Chuck. We're going to call him Chuck tonight because he is a cool dude. And tonight he's going to be talking about the Catskills during the Devonian period, geology in the Catskills, and expanding as much. We'll talk about as much as we can, but I don't think we'll get through what all we want to tonight because we just have so much more to talk about. And with Chuck, with your background and with what you sent me through emails, I have so many freaking questions, and I can't wait to get these answers and stuff. Tad's already learned all this from previous times with Danny and stuff, but I have not. So welcome to the show, Chuck. How you doing tonight?
Yeah, doing good.
Good. Miserable weather, right? What is going on with this weather?
Well, where do you live?
I live up in Oneonta.
So on Thanksgiving, we got 10 inches of snow, and we probably had about 8 more since then. But we're getting rain now, and it's been warmer, so it's starting to melt away. The driveway won't be an icy driveway coming up, it seems. So,
where are you located again?
We live up in western Albany County, up in the Helderbergs.
Same.
So actually, going up an escarpment, which is a set of steps and rises going south up the hill. And that's because of the bedrock under it, which is the marine rocks that are underneath the terrestrial rocks that we're going to talk about tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, it's just been really weird weather, and I'm disappointed. So, but hey, Chuck, why don't you give a little background about yourself? Go as deep as you want from your early days of when you were a kid up here in New York and stuff like that, and then maybe to the time now when you're now a doctor. Sorry, should we call you Doctor Chuck?
I don't go by. I'm not formal about much of anything.
Okay. Go right ahead. Go to background.
Yeah. I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa. The second trip to Colorado at age 8, because we had family out there, we'd go every 3 or 4 years. I couldn't wait to move out of Des Moines in Iowa and get around mountains and forests. Well, I escaped from Des Moines at 21. I was already playing jazz trombone from back in Des Moines. What brought me out east was a music school where the people who were at the cutting front edges of avant-garde jazz, avant-garde classical, and also people from other cultures brought their music in. And so I played trombone for 26 years. When I went to grad school for geology, I didn't have the incentive or the time to keep it up, but voice had already started becoming my instrument. So at core, I'm a naturalist and a musician. And the geology is the main part of my nature these days. But if you look back over here, which is not lit up enough, behind me is a whole shelf unit focused on porcupines.
Oh, interesting.
That's one of my hobbies that for about 5 years in the wintertime, from mid-December to early April, I would go out 3.5 to 5 hours a weekend keeping track of them around where I live.
Interesting.
So, I learned some things. They're very interesting animals.
It sounds like we can do a whole show just on porcupines.
Yeah, right. Let's get a porcupine show on this. Wow, Chuck, you're going to be like a every 5 episode person.
Oh, I don't know.
If you could do that.
Yeah. But yeah, I went back to school when I was 30 because in my mid to late 20s, I got so interested in geology and fossils and stuff. I would sneak into the quarries around Catskill back when you could do that, and pick up all these fossils and look at the rocks, and then I went back at 30 to go to school. At the same time, the state paleontologist at the New York State Museum took me under wing and said, if you start taking some classes, you can start working in the paleontology collection. So I did that, and I did that for 5 years. I would drive to New Paltz, and then I would drive up to Albany. I'd get home about 10 or so at night. It was a great adventure. There's all these Devonian road cuts along the thruway from south of Kingston to, not quite Albany County line. So that was great, and then I went off to grad school to Rochester, and then after I got the PhD, I got a couple jobs in the Midwest where I really didn't want to go back to. Forests and hills, at least, if not mountains. Yeah, but and so then in 2000, I got the job that 2 years before the job at the New York State Museum that I thought would be a really cool job to have someday. And so I work on the Devonian period from various ways, looking at the rocks in the terrestrial. A lot of my years were focused in the rocks in the marine, and finding certain layers, including Devonian volcanic ash layers that you could correlate. The same exact layer, state to state to state, here in the eastern U.S. And anyway, but the last 13, 14 years, most of my work's been in the Catskills and trying to work that out.
Wow.
And I don't know that we'll get to this today, but the rise of LIDAR, for the first time, the LIDAR that goes over the mountains in the Catskills, it sends down lasers that penetrate through the forest and the thin soils on the slopes. And with this one type of 3D LiDAR, you can not just look down from above, but you can look from the side. And for the first time, you can see the layers in the mountainsides of rocks. And some of them you can follow mountain to mountain to mountain to mountain for the first time. But that might be for another time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. Anyway, I love my job, and I could retire, but I have too much stuff to do. And I enjoy the job. And I get to play music once a month with an improvisers orchestra down in Kingston. And so that's always a good adventure. Everybody inventing music on the spot with a few pieces inserted here and there. Yeah.
Is that a heavy metal band that you work with?
No.
I can see you doing the drums and waving that hair and just.
I stand in front of the microphone and constantly moving around while.
That's metal.
We are looking for a new intro for the podcast. So if you want to do a submission, we need something that's a little more understated.
Chuck, I've been told that my music is a little bit too loud in the intro. So if you ever listen to it, listen to the intro.
Yeah. Oh, I'll listen to it after this. Yeah.
But also, Chuck, I want to take a little moment to thank Carl Backus for joining us together. Carl is he a fellow worker of yours?
Yeah. Yep. He works at the State Museum and other geologists in a different wing of geology there. But the Geological Survey.
Yeah, he does stuff up in the Finger Lakes region and stuff, and Carl hooked us up. So I want to thank Carl on this 100% because hooking us up with Chuck is, so far you've only done your background, and I'm super excited. Yeah. So when you're like later on towards your life, you're in your 30s. What got you like into geology? You push yourself over wanting to go more to the mountains, but geology is a whole different level than just like hiking and stuff.
Yeah. I had a little bit of interest in it when I was a kid, but it was just an extension of the naturalist thing. And I was always reading, besides all these other books about mammals and plants and stuff like that, and getting good at identifying different things. I would always read a geology book once or twice and a year, but it would talk about things that were in South Africa and Arizona and Germany. And then I went to the library one time in Woodstock where I was living. I was there for about 12 years as a young musician. And it spoke about the geology right where I lived. It's an old New York State Museum bulletin that starts from a little north of Catskill and runs down to a little north of Kingston, but goes up into the Catskills also. And so I started getting in my car on my 2 days off and driving out to look at various sites that he spoke about. And back in the days when you could sneak in the south gates of some of the quarries, and they didn't worry about that. But anyway, so that really got me wound up. I'm not necessarily a really smart person or anything.
Okay.
I just get very obsessed with stuff and really dig in deep. I really put the time in to try to learn and understand things rather fully. I don't like just speaking off something that crosses my mind, except maybe as a speculation for something.
So when you did this kind of like researching and stuff with the books, were you like hiking a lot in the Catskills and doing like what I do in kind of like the winter months and visualizing these layers? And I just see this and I'm like, God, what happened here? What is this layer of and stuff like that? Were you as curious as I was? But
I did that some in the Catskills, but in the early years, I mainly went to sites down on the west side of the Hudson River, where you're in the marine rocks from the Devonian period. And however, I did go up Catskill Clove in the creek in the lower part of it, and one time found a little thin limestone layer in red shales, which means it was out on floodplains, and the water table was really low, but I found a little thin limestone, 1.5 inches or something, and there was a little fish fossil on it, and some other animals that lived in fresh water. They're very rare to find, generally. But yeah, and so I just got into all this stuff.
Yeah, the curiosity kind of. I wouldn't say it kills you, but it kills you. You just want more.
Yeah, it's a great driver. That's one of the things about anything with teaching, whether it's an informal thing like we're doing tonight, or like the talk that I'm going to give at the Left Bank Cidery in Catskill on a Sunday afternoon, February 2nd. So there'll be slides of a lot of what we're talking about tonight.
And cider.
Yeah, it's a cidery there in Catskill.
Where is that again?
It's in Catskill. You
said cider.
Yeah, cider. I think they have brews also, but
awesome. I will put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
So, Chuck, I've got a couple questions here for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned paleontology.
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, I was going to ask that too, but
yeah, paleontology. Well, geology is the study of rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Paleontology is the study of fossils.
Okay.
And so whether we're talking about snail or a clam that comes out of the marine rocks that are, like at Catskill. Once you get west of Catskill and those beautiful road cuts on Route 23, you pass a last outcrop of marine environments, and then you cross into the earliest terrestrial rocks here in the Catskills region. And that's even in the valley out front of the Catskill escarpment.
And so what is it you're referring to as a terrestrial rock versus a marine rock, just so we're clear on that distinction?
Yeah, the marine rocks were deposited in a seaway, salt water, and at the time, well, let's say in those road cuts going out 23 from Catskill towards the Catskills, that was about 420 million years ago. And you would have animals that lived in a saltwater sea that at that time stretched into central New York, at least. But by the time you get out to around Cairo and this famous Cairo fossil forest that's in the town of Cairo, at that time, a shallow seaway, meaning at deepest a few hundred feet deep, not oceanic depths. But at that time, it stretched all the way out to west of the Mississippi River, to the modern Mississippi River. There was no such river then. Yeah. And a lot of the continents were actually flooded by those shallow seas in those days. The only one we have in North America today is Hudson Bay. And that's one of these shallow seas on the continents. A couple hundred feet deep, a few hundred feet at the deepest. Yeah.
So you're telling us 420 million years ago, more or less.
Yeah.
These shallow seas were over what we now know as land.
Yeah, actually through before the Devonian and after the Devonian for about, let me think here, about 300 million years. There was a good amount of time where a good portion of North America that's not underwater now was underwater then. Yeah.
Wow.
Before I hand it back to Stosh and he's going to pick up the Devonian period with you, why don't you just, and I don't want to put you on the spot and, pin you down, but can you tell us exactly what it is you do for the New York State Museum? I'm just, I find it interesting that a geologist working for a museum, I just look at a museum as being something where like old stuff goes, but not millions of years old.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
I mean,
that's good.
We even have rocks that are billions of years old.
Wow.
A few.
Crazy.
Are
those on display that we can go in? Like, can I touch a rock that's a billion years old?
They were on display for 15 years or so. That's been changed about 4 years ago or something. So they're not visible. And they were behind glass, so we couldn't touch them. Yeah. I mean,
but I bet you've touched them
that are like over 1 billion years old. And, if somebody comes to my office, they could touch that. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So tell us, what is it you do for the State Museum? And then you can pick up with the Devonian.
It's a combination of things. I've helped with exhibits, of course, but my main role is taking care of a collection of sedimentary rocks that some will go on display sometimes, but most of it is kept in the museum. And we have rocks that go back to there's soils that I found in a drawer in a collection earlier this year that were collected in 1820.
Damn.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's materials that can provide information to researchers trying to understand how the Earth works and to learn the history of, in this case, New York. And so those fossils tell us about what the environment was like. Some of the rocks, and this isn't my work, but some of the rocks show us, well, part of it is my work, that during the Devonian period, we were somewhere a little north of 30 degrees south latitude.
We're at 42,
since the
right?
1960s, it became increasingly known that the continental masses moved over time. And so at that time, Eastern North America was a little above 30 degrees south of the equator. It was rotated, so what is east now was more like southeast. So we were in the tropics.
Wow.
During the Devonian.
Yeah, and so that's one part of my job is I consider myself a detective. I consider myself a historian. But I'm reconstructing deep history over about 45 million years of the 60 million years of the Devonian period, starting at about 420 million years ago.
That's an interesting number, 420.
Yeah.
Jesus. I mean, I thought I was going to go with that one, but no, Tad beat me to it.
Yeah, part of what got me really engaged in my mid-20s, and I didn't say that earlier, was that to think about time like geologists think about time in hundreds of thousands, millions, hundreds of millions, billions of years, just so stretched things out. My grandma DeCoster, my mom's mom, she was born in 1888. She could tell me stories. She lived in rural Iowa, grew up on a farm. I don't know how old she was when she saw her first car. She was no doubt in her 20s at least. And so that's one scope of time. Think about Homo sapiens, us. That goes back maybe a million years of time. But to think about when the dinosaurs died off 65 million years ago, when the dinosaur fossils first show up in the record, when they first evolved out of earlier, more primitive reptiles, that was like 230 million years ago. And the history just goes and goes. So part of it was just the fascination of thinking about time. I mean, thinking about, as a glacial geologist would tell us, like your friend Carl, like my friend Carl, about 24,000 years ago, there was a mile of ice over the city of Albany.
Damn.
Things change. That was just, thinking about time and thinking how much things change over time, it dwarfs one's own life and so much more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, we're talking about the Devonian period. Can you chat more about 400 million years ago? You want to describe a little bit more of the Devonian period?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
you find Devonian rocks on all the continents, even Antarctica, some places where there isn't so much ice. But yeah, it was this time when the globe, the world, was in a greenhouse climate time.
Talk about hotter times, right?
Hotter times, yeah, where the temperatures between the poles and the equator were not that different. It was like that during the age of dinosaurs, the latter part of it, the Cretaceous, where huge herds of dinosaurs in the summer would migrate north of the Arctic Circle to feed on the same kind of vegetation, not necessarily the same forms, but feed on deciduous vegetation north of the Arctic Circle forests like we have in New York now.
Wow.
I mean, there's a big blow away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they'd migrate up there for into summer when the sun didn't go down, and then they'd migrate south again as it got cooler and darker, somewhat cooler and darker. Yeah.
Back and forth, back and forth. So
Yeah.
at this
So the
time,
Devonian,
go
sorry,
ahead.
the Devonian was kind of like that. Although towards the latter part of the Devonian, it started to cool and descend into an ice age like we went through the last 2 million years that Carl knows so much about.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
So with this time, what was the Catskills look like it's a stretch, 400 million years ago. Like, what did we look like back 400 million years ago?
I'm going to start in New England. Around 420 million years ago, some smaller continents began to collide with Eastern North America. And this is along the lines of India colliding with Southern Asia the last 30 million years. And it built up a very high mountain belt. That mountain belt extended from East Greenland all the way down to Alabama. And some of the people who work in the mountain belt have at least conjectured that along that mountain belt, remember it was various small continents colliding with Eastern North America, along parts of that mountain belt, they were probably as high as the modern day Andes Mountains.
Damn.
There were volcanoes erupting, tremendous earthquakes, and massive volumes of mud and sand and gravel eroding off the mountains and being carried eastward on the other side of the mountain belt, and on our side of the mountain belt, carrying all that sediment, all the mud and the sand and the gravel into places west of the Appalachian Mountains. And slowly the seaway, because in the early part of the Devonian, like the rocks in those road cuts just west of Catskill on 23, that seaway extended out into New England. But slowly as the mountains built and the mountains were being pushed by the small continents behind, they migrated, and tremendous amount of the mud, sand, and gravel came into New York, all along the mountain belt, and began to fill in the sea to above sea level. And that is where these famous Catskill forests, like the Gilboa Forest and the Cairo fossil forest. If you go back to the beginning of the Devonian, 420 million years ago, the Devonian period was really the time when life really massively colonized the lands. If you go back to the beginning of the Devonian, about 420 million years again, your tallest plants are going to be basically the stretch between the end of your thumb to the end of your index finger, if you have them stretched out as far as they can be apart. Wow. That was your tallest plants. And they only lived right along the edge of the waters.
Wow.
Yet, by halfway through the Devonian period, you had trees tens of feet tall. And especially the biggest one known now is the one with the big roots. We don't know how tall it was, but the roots on this big tree at Cairo, which was the first discovery, three of us were walking across the floor of this old quarry, and I saw some kind of thing that looked like a little gutter in the rock floor. And it's like, what is that? We looked around, and we found some others, and we all walked, and we met at one place, and there were 11 of these big gutters that got narrower as they went out. It dawned on us, it didn't take long for it to dawn on us that we were looking where a tree stood 385 million years ago.
So before you talked about the location at like 30 degrees longitude, we're at 42, right? Right now?
Yeah, we're at 42.
So that's latitude center, sir.
That was a little less than 30 degrees south of the equator in the tropics. In the tropics, plus the greenhouse.
So that's where we were at 400 million years ago was 30 degrees.
Yeah.
Wow. And we've been
30 degrees south.
Wow. And then we've been pushed up. And now, would you say at the time you said we were kind of like the mountains were kind of like the Nepal mountains, so 20,000 something. So would you say that
like the Andes probably?
Andes. Okay, so
analogous where India collided with Southern Asia, pushing up that big Himalaya mountain range.
So was our mountains similar in type of profile as to those mountains with like rock, or we were more sedimentary kind of stuff of less pointy or more kind of round and stuff like that?
It was all rock that was being pushed up into the air as the mountains rose. And some of it had been buried miles deep.
Was it like metamorphic rock?
Surface.
That metamorphic?
Metamorphosed rocks, yeah. You can see green. You can see a little bit of green flakes like up at North-South Lake in some of the rocks. And that's from rocks that were buried. They originated as sediments and then sedimentary rocks, but they got buried under the mountain so deep that some of the muds turned into other minerals, like a green one called chlorite. Yeah. And that's green in the mountains in the Catskills. So anyway, the Catskills at that time were just a great plain of sediments with rivers coming out of the mountains, carrying all this mud and sand out into the sea, but also being deposited in the river channels and off on floodplains to the side. Yeah.
Wow.
So would it be like the Mississippi River Delta?
Yeah, in a way, but picture deltas, rivers like that, all the way from East Greenland down to Alabama.
Yeah, massive river. So is this same process occurring presently relative to the Andes Mountains, where you have this erosion and the depositing of the eroded material into a delta or a plain?
Yes, but it's not the same kind of mountains because those formed differently. They didn't form from continents colliding, smaller continents colliding with the Western South America. Let me ask something. Am I talking at a good level here? Is this
absolutely?
Oh, you're doing great. You're doing great, Chuck.
Okay, I really try to pay attention to that.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
I know, right?
About Stosh, but yeah,
I usually am drinking like crazy right now, but I'm not drinking. I'm focusing. I'm just like he is. I'm not saying you're all over the place, but goddamn, I just can't.
Yeah.
I'm not this smart, so I'm just trying to figure out everything and keep with it. The one last question I got before Tad takes over. So with this, between 400 million years ago and now, you're saying those Andes types of mountain have eroded to what we have today. That's a lot of like weather.
Yeah.
Wet and movement and stuff.
Yeah. Most of it from water. The ice just came in more recent times and that just modified it. But most of it's from just water erosion.
Wow.
You probably know about, downstream of the Papacton Reservoir, there are these deeply incised loops that go back and forth. I can't remember the town that's at the top of it, but it's like 700-foot cliffs to get down to the river and the highway. And
talking about like Phoenicia and Fleischmann's and stuff?
No, you'd go out to Margaretville and then get on the highway that goes alongside the...
Are you going west?
Is it Downsville?
The Papacton
down by Downs.
Downville, Arena, stuff like that.
I can't remember all the names, and I can't remember the one that's, up on top where it's really the deepest. But
oh, wow. Yeah. You could see a lot of people, don't travel that far because, the high peaks are over there. But you get on something like Catskill, You can see those deep valleys going through the Picapton and stuff. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, just winding out. And the glaciers totally went crazy over that. So,
but
Ted,
that's been weathering down for, I don't know, a couple million years. No, it has to be more than that. Tens of millions of years to get these deeply incised meanders going back and forth that the river does there.
Crazy. So, Chuck, you mentioned the greenhouse climate at the time. Is that what was generating all this precipitation, the rain, the melting snow, whatever it was coming down this mountain range, causing the erosion?
Yes, not that much during the Devonian, but since
it came
that
after?
time, the last 300 million years, it's eroded down to the level. So, like, at the time of, let's say the Cairo fossil forest, there near Cairo, at that time, the shoreline of that sea that extended west of today's Mississippi River, the shoreline was basically the Schoharie Valley. Maybe a little farther west of there. But so much mud and sand kept coming that it kept filling it in, like shoveling sand into a puddle or gravel into a puddle to where you've got, a little bit of a pothole or something. We have a gravel driveway, so I think that way. But it would be like that, shoveling in sand or gravel into mud puddle, into a puddle. That it just keeps filling in from the side that you're shoveling towards. Yeah.
So you talked about the greenhouse effect.
Yeah.
We've spoken about how what we now know as North America was 30 degrees below, or approximately 30 degrees below the equator.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the average day? Was the average day in terms of sunlight or rotation of the Earth the same back then, or were there other different variables at play that a day was longer, shorter, or something else?
Wow. You really hit one of the big stories of the Devonian. But it's happened all through time.
Tell us about it, Chuck.
Back in the late 1800s, astronomers came up with this crazy idea. People must have just thought, even their peers thought they were just nuts, saying that they suggested, they hypothesized, there's a good word, that the spin of the Earth, a day going around from one position to the next, one position and back to it, that had slowed down, and that the days were shorter than they used to be. No, sorry, they used to be longer. Up. Yeah, that the days used to be longer than they are now. What a crazy idea. But back in the early 1960s, a paleontologist studying fossil corals from central New York, he started looking. They have like these bulging rings. Some of them are good-sized bulges. Some of them are just very small little things. He started counting the 3 different sizes of these kind of rings that bulge out a bit. These are the kind of corals that they call horn corals. They have kind of the shape where they're broader at your head, and then they get narrower to a tip. And so they look kind of like horns, but actually the narrow part is down in the sediment on the seafloor, and then the basically a sea anemone would be at the top of that in a cup. But anyway, he started counting those. And within the big bulges, the big growth rings that were fat, he found 399 very small ones. And when you looked at them under a high-powered scope, you would see that there was a little bit of the skeleton that comes out and then not, and then a little bit and not, which reflected the growth during a day in the light, and then no growth overnight. And he found 399 of these in between the fat ones. And so, yeah, I mean, we don't have 399 days in a year now, do we? That ever since the early history of the Earth, the rotation of the Earth going around day to day has basically slowed, and we have longer days. And they've showed that in the Precambrian, way back billions of years ago through other things. And you can see it in some of the fossils in the age of dinosaurs. I don't remember the numbers of those, but to go from the Middle Devonian about 385 million years ago when there were 399 days, yeah, now there's 365. So the dinosaur time would have been partway in the middle of that.
Wow.
Of those two numbers. Yeah.
So a lot of, I'm very curious. A lot of the times I hear about breakthroughs in like discoveries and stuff has always been in upstate New York or somewhere around that area. Why is that? Like, it seems like everything in the breakthrough of geology and stuff and different discoveries have been up here. That's phenomenal that happens in such a small part. Are we like just that far ahead of people, or is it just this area is very unique for the study of geology and stuff like that?
I don't know that that's fully the pattern. We hear about the things in our region more than elsewhere. We only hear about the big global stories, which actually the Cairo fossil forest.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Paper came out. It was in papers on every continent. Who knows? Somebody probably got a delivery in the mail in Antarctica. Another geologist and paleontologist studying down there. But anyway, yeah, that was all over. I've seen it in Japanese. It was in Romanian. It was in Brazilian, etc. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I got sidelined. But significantly, back in 1836, the state of New York created a geological survey in 5 different parts of the state. A main geologist and then some assistants would go out and just study 1/5 of the state and build towards a final report in 1842. I mean, they were walking, they were riding horses, they were maybe sometimes in carriages. But, they just went all around their part of the state. And so in that way, New York became one of the most important states that for the study of geology. Other states were catching up and stuff. I think the South Carolina Geological Survey was the year before the New York one. But it ended up that the work that was done by my predecessors at the New York State Museum back in the 1830s, 1840s, drew so much attention that geologists from Europe and other places were coming, geologists and paleontologists, fossils, they were coming to Albany to speak with those people. And for the Devonian period, the Devonian of New York has been since that time the main reference for the strata in North America.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome, because I just remember when that hit the press, like it was huge. Like
the Cairo story. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we know that like from the pictures and stuff like that area has been like sectioned off and been studied ever since. And then all of a sudden it's expanded. We've talked, Ted and I have talked to a bunch of people who up in Grand Gorge have done geology and stuff. Carl, Dr. Titus. I mean, it's just the whole geology of New York State and New England is just expansive beyond of what we can comprehend. It's just all over the place. You guys are all over the place.
Yeah. Actually, I'll just say this, for any geologists who might be out there listening and don't know about this, the group of us whose main focus is really on the Devonian period and in New York, but also how it relates to the states around. And actually, the core of us are also representatives for New York internationally. We've been elected to this international organization of Devonian researchers, both the fossils and the rocks. So,
Wow.
So we put together a 3-volume set called Devonian of New York. And it looks at a lot of different things, including the last chapter in the 3rd volume, 120 pages on the terrestrial rocks and fossils and environments, mostly focused on the Catskills, rocks deposited on land.
Well, I got a lot of reading.
Oh, it's fairly technical.
Nothing's too technical for us. We got this, Stosh.
Yeah.
So, Chuck, I want to first of all, I want to ask you, and you don't have to be modest here. Are you like one of the top 5 people, let's say, in the country on the Devonian?
Be honest.
Don't shake your head.
Don't.
I mean, seriously. We'll limit to those people who are alive.
Look at that smirk. He knows he is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Chuck, when he says no, he's like lying through his teeth. His face is turning green.
But...
Chuck, your nose is so long now, it's hitting your television camera. Computer cam. All right, we're going to move on to the next question,
I will step
folks.
away from the modesty to say that the first chapter in Devonian of New York, it first gives an overview of some of these big stories, like how many days a year in the Devonian, some of these big global Devonian stories. And then it goes through and gives an overview of all the areas in North America, including Central America, where you find Devonian rocks. And then it went to look at Eastern North America, where the mountain belt was, and where these volcanoes were erupting, which has been one of my big interest since 1989 in these Devonian rocks, and because we have volcanic ashes even in the Catskills, not just in the marine rocks. And then I got to New York and I gave a history of who studied and what they looked at in the early days, and then walked from the base of the Devonian and the Silurian rocks, like at Thatcher Park, 5 miles north of where I live. Thatcher State Park, and then just walked all the way to the top of the Devonian, which is it's over in Ohio. We don't have the topmost Devonian rocks here in New York, but almost. Yeah. So I really spent a lot of time digging down deep in stuff like that. So
still didn't answer the question.
No pun
avoiding the
intended
question
with the digging down deep either. So Chuck, let me ask you, just to kind of cement this concept with the Devonian period, because as I understand it, and I don't have my PhD in rocks, but my wife does say I have a rock head, but that's another episode maybe.
There's something to talk about afterwards too.
Yeah, I would assume so. So the Devonian period, leading up to the Devonian period, life on Earth, living things, organisms, and plants, as I understand from what you told us earlier, it's all happening in the marine environment, in the water. Is that true?
Yes, beginning about 3.5 billion years ago, they find microscopic fossils of, and here's a big story coming that blows even the Devonian away completely. So about
I'm going to put my seatbelt on. Hold on. All right.
3.5 billion years ago, they can find these microscopic fossils that are of types of bacteria in the rocks in certain places around the world. Australia, some of those rocks are that old or older.
Is this terrestrial life?
This is marine.
Okay, marine life.
And in fact, get this, the original atmosphere of the Earth had no oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
The oxygen that we have now was generated by one of these types of bacteria that we not uncommonly see in waters. And I use this word technology purposely. They developed a new technology to get their nutrition. They took the sunlight from the sky, coming in from the sun, and CO2 from the waters, and created a new form of getting your food, getting your own energy. However, up to that point and afterwards, and still today, the other forms, very simple bacteria, they didn't even have a nucleus for those who know about those things. They put off one of the most toxic pollutants ever to hit planet Earth. The byproducts of sun and CO2 to make their food emitted the toxic pollutant oxygen. And over time, at first, well, it's a complex story. Maybe we can explore that another time. That's not necessarily the Devonian. But anyway, that's why we have oxygen nowadays.
Yeah. So before the Devonian, there's no oxygen or very little in the atmosphere.
By 2.5 billion years ago, I think, it started to escape from the oceans into the atmosphere, but very slowly built up. But certainly by, I don't know how far to go back, but certainly by 500 million years ago, there was a reasonable amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. Not as high as we have today. But all life was marine until sometime before the Devonian, a period before the Devonian. There's a Silurian period. It's about 25 million years. And then an Ordovician period. And during that Ordovician period, they find the reproductive materials that, can't think of the darn word right now. Not seeds,
when you say
and not pollen, but what ferns use to reproduce.
Spores?
Right. They found spores in land environments. So when
you said reproductive materials,
but it really
I thought you were going to
until the Silurian, where more stuff moved onto land. But then it was Devonian, but it was very minor and very, very small. But by the time you got to the beginning of the Devonian, again, the stretch from your far end of your thumb to the far end of your index finger, that was your tallest plant.
Wow. So before I hand it back to Stosh, and maybe he can pick up the conversation with sedimentary rocks.
Sure.
What is it that marks the beginning of the Devonian period and the end? Why is it that period has those two bookends to it, if you will?
What the early geologists did was look at the fossils. And when there was a major change in the fossils that you found in the rocks, that would separate out different periods. I mean, a very drastic one is the end of the dinosaurs, 65.5 million years ago. That was enough to even make it not just a period, but the end of an era too, which is a longer time period with multiple.
So what is it that marks the beginning of the Devonian period?
So there's certain fossils that happen that you find all around the world. They're very strange fossils. They're kind of like a bulb type thing. And I don't mean a light bulb. It's more like some kind of the squashes that are not very tall but very broad across. But they were more like a squeezed down baseball, about that size. So they were something connected to relative of the starfish called crinoids. Crinoids are like starfish at the top of a stem that would be anchored into the seafloor. And they look like, they call them water lilies, or no, they call them sea lilies or something like that, because they had arms that would reach out and grab food, like a starfish does underneath the body. They would do it up above, and there would be a cup. And so when those fossils disappear, and a few other types of fossils, that's how they define the boundary between the Silurian period before and the Devonian period above. And that boundary is right in those road cuts along Route 23, the first road cuts that you go through. On the north side of 23, there's an exit ramp, and that boundary is right there in those rocks. Yeah.
At the lower elevation.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So, and now what marks the end of the Devonian period and what follows it?
Yeah, the end of the Devonian is marked by one of the major mass extinctions since over the last 520 million years. It wasn't as big as the extinction of the dinosaurs. It wasn't as big as a couple of the others. But actually, in the Devonian, there were 4 significant extinction events, global extinction events. And we have 3 of them here in New York. We have 3 of them in the rocks here in New York. Yeah.
And they are, for our listeners, what are those 3 extinctions you're referring to that are out in our Catskill sedimentary rocks?
Yeah, 2 of them occur in the middle part of the Devonian. So people have heard about the Marcellus Shale, probably from all the things of the oil and gas that has been in the news for the last 15 years or 20. So one of them occurs within those rocks. Another one occurs up a bit higher in the Devonian, middle Devonian. So that might be about 380 million years ago. And then one of the biggest 5 or so is in about the middle of the late Devonian. So about 375 million years ago. Yeah.
Can we find these rocks when we're hiking along at all? Like, kind of like see these layers anywhere in the Catskills, like, and make that gauge?
We have no idea where those occur in the Catskills. The first one I mentioned is in the marine rocks down in the Hudson Valley, or spreading all the way out to, Lake Erie, or going all the way down to southwestern Virginia. But that's in the marine rocks.
Okay.
And it's kind of subtle. And then the 2 above there, probably the third one I spoke of, is higher than the rocks in the Catskills, unless you're down around the Pennsylvania border somewhere. And the middle one would be, it should fall the top of the Catskill escarpment, a little below there somewhere, probably, but we have no idea where in the Catskill escarpment, rising up to North-South Lake cliffs and Mountain House site.
So with a lot of chat in the Catskills, we all know about is the sedimentary rock. Can you explain what is the sedimentary rock in the Catskills? Because I'm pretty sure that's all over the Catskills.
Yeah. It's mainly 2 types. And as you get higher, it becomes less and less of one of those 2. First is muds that turned into shales. Shale is basically muds. There can be a little bit of sand mixed in, or between microscopic mud crystals, and the sand is something we call silt. It's just very fine. If it's coarse silt, you can feel it's a little sandpapery. Sandstone, and I have a piece here. Oh, I didn't get that one out yet.
Got a whole collection there.
Yeah, I brought some things home.
Digging deep.
Stosh, don't you have rocks in your room? Look at
I do. I mean, I'm not going to say that I got them from the Catskills, because I got them from my backyard. That's nothing of a rock. I got fossils.
I can't see enough detail, but I have in my hand a chunk of rock from the Catskills. It's some of that sandstone that you can immediately feel it. When you feel it, if it hasn't been smoothed off in the creek or something, you feel it's like sandpaper. So that's an easy way to tell the sandstones. And also, they stand out making ledges, like when you're driving up Catskill Clove and you see, you get above the trail to the falls, the old trail to Catskill Falls, you'll see ledges sticking out of the rock, and that would be the sandstone. It'll tend to be gray in color, the color of the famous bluestones. And then there's also shales. And so the sandstones mostly were deposited in the river channels. It never got carried all the way out to the seaway. Again, like west of the Schoharie Valley, if you're at the Cairo Quarry. And then the muds would be carried out. I grew up in Iowa, so we had floodplains that would stretch out sometimes for a couple miles from the river channel. And when the spring floods would come, when big rains came, it would just spread out across these broad areas. And that's what it was like between the big rivers that were coming out of the Appalachian Mountains during the Devonian. You'd have the river channels, they would move over time, and when they filled above the level of the land around it, then the river channels would shift into the lower areas during floods. But anyway, so that's the sandstones. And then there's a lot of shales. And actually, a lot of people have noticed the red rocks as they drive around the Catskills, at least the easternmost Catskills. The red color tells you something. When it's green shale, that tells you something. When it's dark gray or black shale, that tells you something. And you can see some of this even at the Cairo Quarry. When you have the red rocks, that tells you that the sediments, the muds originally, were deposited, the red rocks were situated above a water table so that oxygen could come in from the atmosphere and rust the iron, reduce it.
Oxidize.
Oxidize, thank you. The
Something
iron,
nice.
so
That sounds smart.
If the water table was higher than your sediments, then the muds, the shales, would be green. And if it was a swampy wetland, like the kind that many of us did when we were kids and had our rubber boots on, and when we picked up our foot, we didn't only smell the nasty sulfur smell, but also our boot came off our foot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stosh and I have been there with Mike Kudish out those bogs. Right.
Those bogs are nasty.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike's great. Wow.
Yeah.
The other rocks that were common were conglomerates, and that's where you see gravel. Like you go up to North-South Lake and go along the trails to the south or to the north, and you come across thick gravels with some sand between the pebbles. And that really means some high energy water was moving gravel out of the mountains. That means something either happened in the mountains to make it steeper, or that sea level in the seaway out in first eastern New York, going to central New York, going to western New York, the sea level dropped. The sea level dropped. So anyway, so when you're driving the Catskills and you see the red or the green or the dark shales, you can talk about the water tables at that time of those rock layers.
Yeah, crazy. So speaking about roaming around in this area where the Catskills are, just further to the east, we have the Schwangunk Ridge.
Right.
I'm sure you're familiar with that. Yeah. And those rocks are, can we agree, Chuck, are different than sedimentary rocks. So why don't you compare and contrast the two? Because many of our listeners are familiar with both areas, and how are the Schwangunk Ridge and its rocks different from Catskill rocks?
Yeah, I've done a few, 3 maybe trips at anyway up in Minnewaska in the new part of the park, where the ice caves are. You know, the old tourist ice caves
Correct. Sam's Point
Sam's
area.
Point area, exactly.
Yep.
So one time when we were prepping, maybe it was the first hike we were going to lead up there, going through the ice caves. We got under a surface where the rock had collapsed under it. So there was an open space. We could sit there and look at the rocks on the surface. And this must have been 12 foot by 8 foot or 15 foot by 8 foot surface. And we went around and we looked. There were a lot of these white pebbles, and then there was white sand between them, some. But we counted on a surface like that, I don't know, 15, 20 little black grains of sand-sized material. Everything else was milky quartz that got that white color, whether it was the sand or whether it was the pebbles. And so the sedimentary rocks there are very different as far as what kind of pebbles and sand grains are made of. Looking at this gravel I have in my hand from up on the Catskill escarpment, I see gray ones, I see red ones, I see other things. I know that there's even red jasper rock sometimes up there at the top of the escarpment and higher. And some of the milky quartz that came out of the mountains. But yeah, so those two ranges are very different. The Shawangunk, depending if you know about the locals or not, local lore, that's all milky quartz, and it's cemented by quartz. And quartz is the hardest common mineral on the planet Earth. So it doesn't dissolve. It doesn't break easily. So that ridge can just stand up there like that.
Wow.
And it continues all the way down into West Virginia at Seneca Rocks, another famous rock climbing area down there. It's the same rocks as we have in New York down there in Shawangunk.
So which of the two rock formations is older? The Catskills or
the Shawangunk, that's from the Silurian period. So that's the older.
Yeah.
And they go underneath the Catskills. And some of that gravel shows up in central New York, up towards Lake Ontario. Same rock layer, but they were buried.
I always knew that, like just by reading and stuff like that, the Shawangunk Ridge, the closer area to the Hudson Valley is more solid than up in the Catskills. There's more eroding happening up in the Catskills, and down in the Hudson, it's a little bit more solid. And that's my only knowledge I have, but that's that kind of the quartz or stuff like that is less eroding and stuff like that. It's crazy. It's crazy to think about that. You look when you drive along. I'm not familiar with 87 or stuff like that, but you can see along. Those drives that you can see that the solid rock is below that, and then above the Catskills that they're more rounded instead of being edgy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
the Catskill rocks are not as hard as the Shawangunk rocks, but they still are pretty hard, and that's why the mountains are still so high. We talked about the shales that were deposited on the floodplains. That's fine when you first go into the Catskill rocks in the western part of the valley and going up the Catskill escarpment. But as you go higher above the Catskill escarpment, you get less and less of the shales, which were muds, which erode more easily.
Yeah.
Certainly. So as you go up to the higher peaks in the Catskills, even down in the lower part of Hunter Mountain and lower part of Wittenberg and Slide, those rocks have become more stronger, because they don't have much of any mud in them at all. There's some in places, but
and that's why we have our problems kind of with the trail systems and stuff like that, because stuff is still eroding, of course, and we got to clean out those water bars and areas, and it's just so fascinating. I'm sorry, I'm just lost in like outer space with all this stuff. It's just, I'm sorry.
So Chuck, can I ask you, where would we go in the Hudson Valley area or in New York State, New England, to stand on the remains of one of these old Acadian mountains.
Acadian mountains, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any knob or outcrop of that mountain range which is still in existence?
It's eroded down miles and miles since it was at its peak. Just so everybody has, you brought up the Acadian Mountains and the Acadian mountain building event. That was during the Devonian. A little bit off the edges beyond either side. But anyway, it was 3 different mountain building events that formed the modern Appalachians. And so the Devonian Acadian orogeny, we use a different name than the one that was in the Ordovician period, 2 periods, the second period before the Devonian, and then in the late part of what's called the Paleozoic era after the Devonian. That's when all of the continents came together to form one big continent, Pangea, which people might have heard of. But anyway, so it was those 3 episodes that we see the remains of in the Appalachian mountain chain. So, yeah, the Devonian ones, if you drive towards Boston on 90, you will drive through metamorphic rocks that have been altered some. But when you go down in this one big valley and you see all these shining, on a sunny day, and you see all these shiny rocks reflecting out at you, that would have been down in the bowels of the Devonian mountain belt, the Acadian mountain belt, when multiple small continents were colliding.
And now we have the Appalachian. We're the Appalachian mountain, right?
Just a combination of all 3 of those mountain building events.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the stuff like before you get to the Connecticut River Valley, that was the real deep stuff of that Acadian orogeny.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Chuck, we're going to totally skip the volcanic stuff, and we're going to do a deep dive episode on that later. Like, I need a whole thing about that.
Yeah.
You don't mind that we do this again, right? Because like the volcanic question is just.
Yeah. Chuck, I'm having so much fun with you.
Right.
I'm gonna nominate you as our geologist in residence, and we'll give you a handsome stipend to your current pay rate.
High five.
I can't accept any money for any programs I do.
Yeah,
I'll give you a free sticker. This isn't really. Yeah, you'll get a free sticker, and we'll give you twice as much as Stosh is paying me to be his sidekick on this show. Okay, so you can get, and you only have to show up like once out of every 4 or 5 shows, but you'll collect your paycheck will bounce twice as high as mine, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, I thought when Stosh raised his 2 hands with the 10 fingers, I thought he was going to give me 10 pennies and then take them away from me.
And 10 high fives or high fives.
So high fives. Yeah, I enjoy doing stuff like this. I really enjoy it. And I've done hundreds. I had to count them up recently for a talk I'm going to give at a meeting in March. That's talking about that the session is going to be focused around talking to students, talking to your college students and university students, talking to grade school K-12 students, talking to the public, talking to other geologists. It's going to be about communicating geology and paleontology, because I do both. But so that's one of the talks I'm going to give at a meeting in late March. Yeah, and the other ones are going to be at 2 different meetings, and they're going to be about the Devonian terrestrial in New York.
Okay. We're not done yet, Chuck.
Excellent.
A couple more questions, buddy.
So Chuck, this is one of my favorite questions, but I didn't even think of asking you this. It comes in from one of our faithful listeners, so I want you to listen intently and closely.
Are they listening now?
No, but they're presumably they're going to listen. They're going to listen to the show, and nobody actually listens to the show, Chuck. That's the big joke. It's
I don't know.
Not even our wives listen to it.
Right? Yeah. Shows in. You guys have really been doing this a good while. It's
Yeah,
great
talking to no
see.
one.
Great
Yeah.
to see.
So,
I didn't even know
all right,
about
so
it. And now I'll start watching
Yeah.
it a lot.
yeah, you and millions of other people don't know about this great podcast. but
Billions.
That's right. All right, Chuck, this is the big question of the night. Are you ready?
Ready?
Okay. Are the Catskills mountains? And if so, why? Yeah. And if you don't think they're mountains, then why aren't they? But we want to know. We have you. You're like the leading guy, even though you won't admit it. We want to know from New York State's authority, are the Catskill Mountains really mountains?
I will
Take your time. Take your time.
I will talk about it. I see those two sides very clearly. It depends on your definition. And you two probably know about the article that Danny Davis did, I don't know, 4 years back or something, about this question. And he really analyzed it. He's a brilliant person. And I can see both sides. I mean, really, if you want to know how they formed, then you would say this is like taking a paperback book and taking one of those very sharp knife things, with the razor blade on the end, and cutting down through the books in V's. And that's what would be like water dissecting a flatland, a plateau, as they would call it, and forming valleys and leaving behind more resistant places that are peaks. So if you're talking about it in a context like that, how did it form? And what are the physical characters of it? Then you would not say that it was mountains, because the other definition of mountains is that you have, of which actually those road cuts west of Catskill there, going through those limestones from the early part of the Devonian, with the fold there curving up and down, and the faults where the rocks have broken and been moved on top of younger rocks and stuff. That is, and metamorphism, not good preserved sedimentary rocks, the sweet rocks of them all. Not that scum on the surface, the soils and the glacial stuff, and not the Adirondack.
Davis is going to consider those fighting words.
Yeah, we used to joke when we do our earth science teacher workshops in the early years after 2000. 2001 was our first one. We still do them. The rocks in the Adirondacks, it's like taking a wonderful cake of some kind and compacting it down to, on all sides, the thickness of a penny or less, and baking them in the oven where there's just, you can't eat that stuff. So the sweet rocks are the sedimentary. All right, sorry, sidetracked there.
That's fine.
Oh, right. So in the mountain belts, those rocks have been under deep burial since they're eroded down now here, not like, say, the Andes or the Himalaya, or moderately not so old would be the Grand Tetons and those sharp peaks.
Yeah.
So it's when you have rocks that are all deformed as a mountain belt is pushing up into the sky. That's the other clear definition of a mountain belt. So those are the two main perspectives on that. And I just see both of them. Are you talking about how they formed? Or are you talking about what they're formed of? How did you get peaks? Et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the Adirondacks had their peaks because of water weathering too, but the rocks aren't formed in the Catskills. There's some.
Yeah. There's a lot of controversy between that. A lot of people talk about that, and what defines a mountain? Is it elevation gain? Is it how they were formed? Is it, what, like a lot of people say, like the Catskills aren't mountains because they don't have, open summits. Like, really? Like, come on.
Oh, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter to me. Open summits, that's a matter of how high elevation it is, and the weather conditions up there, how cold it gets.
Exactly.
Now, I don't consider that as anything.
And that's why everybody goes to the Adirondacks, because they have open summits, and then unfortunate things happen. So
Beautiful to see up there. Yeah.
So if I can, Stosh, just one more
Absolutely.
question
Go ahead.
for Dr. Chuck.
I love it.
Just
And this is something that I'm not as studied up on as other things regarding the Catskills, their history, formation, etc. But can you just give us a flyover, if you will, that at one point, with all of the weight of the sediment, the sedimentary layers that built up over millions and millions of years, this plain or delta is pushed down into the Earth's crust. And then as that sediment is eroded away, is it true that it rises up again? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. Part of it was from the weight of the Catskills themselves, the sediments that stacked up so high coming off of the mountain, but also the mountain belt. It perhaps, I don't know specifically with the Appalachians and how far they went down during the 3 mountain building events, but it's like a glacier. A glacier, you only see the very tip top of it. Everything else sinks down in the water. When you build up a big mountain belt, most of the rock weighs down and descends down into into maybe to the mantle of the earth. I don't remember the details of that. But, and then as rock erodes off the top, in either case, then it all can rise again. But building that mountain belt made the seaway here in New York and up and down the Appalachians west of the mountain belt became like a moat out there in front of the mountains. So right now, I'll just say this, there's an estimated, and hopefully in 3 years from now, 4 years from now, I'll have a sense of how thick the actual terrestrial rocks are in the Catskills. Say going from Catskill, Saugerties, west of Catskill and west of Saugerties, to the top of Slide Mountain. But anyway, there is estimates based on a couple different analyses that says there probably was on the order of 3 miles of rock on top of Slide Mountain in the past.
Wow.
Someone
3 miles.
Who lives in Kingston now, he and I have been in touch the last 4 months or so talking about things. And he thinks there had to be a lot more than that for the Catskills to still be that tall, that thick. Like about a mile, 1.4 miles thickness of rock. He said there must have been a lot more to weather down over the last, say, 300 million years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So the time to go hike up Slide Mountain, it was just like, not even 2.5 miles, maybe a little bit over. You would have to hike double that to get to the top of Slide Mountain back 300 million years ago.
I'm not talking about the elevation of Slide Mountain. I'm talking about the stack of rocks that go
Jesus.
from the stack of rocks that first get deposited on land west of Catskill and Saugerties.
Oh, wow.
And west of Kingston.
The terrestrial layer, that first terrestrial layer.
The rock that were deposited by rivers carrying sediment out to the big seaway, shallow seaway on the continent.
Wow.
Yeah. I think of it all as like a big layer cake out there.
Yeah.
It is.
And between the ice sheets, the glaciers, the water, those are like the knives cutting into the layer cake.
Yeah.
Good way to
cutting,
describe it.
Contours and changing and transforming that landscape to what it is today.
Yeah.
True.
And most of it happened from the water.
Yeah, exactly.
For hundreds of millions of years. The glacial ice over the last, we don't know how many glacial episodes extended down to the Catskills. Certainly, Andy Kozlowski and Carl would say 4 times at least. And they were finding evidence for some of these earlier glaciations too. Anyway.
Actually, I'm going to have Andy on the show soon.
Oh.
think I have him on a later date. I'm excited.
He knows about that stuff very well.
Yes. More geology. Love it.
Yeah. So before I hand it back to Stosh, I did have that question about whether the Catskills are or are not mountains in my list of questions.
Yeah.
But when I asked Davis what questions I should ask you, that was on the top of the list.
Danny's.
So,
Yeah.
Danny put that out there as well. So, and he did write that nice article in the Canister a few years ago, which I thought he really packaged up that whole concept brilliantly.
Yeah.
So back to Stosh.
Yeah. Sorry.
No,
That's
go
all right.
right ahead, Chuck. What are you going to say?
I just say it depends how you look at it. You know,
Yeah.
there are different definitions, and there might be. Trying to remember if there were one or more additional little things that would more finely detail the argument. But
right.
I was one of the people who reviewed it before we submitted it. Wow. Yep.
Nice.
Great guy, great geologist, great person.
Yeah. Phenomenal. He was a great time on here. So, we have two more questions. One last question for me. What was the most surprising or kind of like exciting discovery that you have found in Catskills? I'm guessing that's that got to be the fossil forest down in Cairo.
Yeah, it's the Cairo fossil core.
Oh, nice.
Of course. Yeah.
So with that being said, I remember pictures. How, like, my wife and I plan on going to see the sequoias within the next year. Yeah. I remember seeing a picture of that kind of the fossil, and that was like 3-4 times the size of a sequoia, correct?
No.
I thought I saw a person on there and it was like nothing compared to that.
Oh, no. Sequoias. These trees, we don't know how tall they got. So the Cairo fossil forest, it's been known to paleobotanists since the 50s. And there's one guy who published 4 scientific papers about the different plant fossils that were found in there, in the rocks. That quarry was emptied, taken out to put hard rock underneath the thruway as they were building it northward through the Catskill area and a bit farther north as they continued to Albany and then to Montreal. So it laid there for just decades.
Wow.
And then it just took somebody who already had a search image of a gutter-like thing that I'd seen. That's a story for another time. That my eye I wasn't even looking down. My eye just unconsciously caught this shape of kind of like a gutter, a shallow gutter. And then we started looking around and there were more. So the first roots that were found were of the big tree. And the roots on that one, maybe a couple of them went out about 24 feet. And then the one that I measured out certainly went down into the ground. It wasn't at the end. It went down into the rock that was the soil at that time.
Wow. Unbelievable. Just hopefully one day we could get that area opened up to the public, or just me and Ted, and so we can see what it was like. Just that feeling, You can go up to like a Gilboa Museum and check out some old fossil trees, right? Correct, up there?
Yeah, they have some of the fossil plants up there. It's a nice little museum. They have some good stuff.
Very small. It's very
There's
small.
There's been 5 different levels up in the Gilboa area where they found the stumps. So there's probably more than that, up in the Gilboa area, and also down the Catskill front and going up the mountains. 1.4 miles of rocks deposited on land. And the times of some of the earliest forests right now, the Cairo fossil forest is the oldest known one on the earth. There's one on the west coast of England that's been found a number of places. But when I talked to the authors of that, they told me, well, maybe these are like proto-trees, and so maybe those are like proto-forests. So in that sense, because they get 2 meters, 7 feet tall, something like that.
Yeah, English terms, we're not. This is English, like 18 hamburgers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
Anyway, so Chuck, last question for the night.
Yep.
We have a question called post hike brews and bites. When you're out in the Catskills, your Hudson Valley area, where do you go after you take a good excursion out in the Catskills to get something to drink and something to eat?
Yeah. After one of your Kingston nights playing jazz,
that too.
Improv music. Yeah. Where do you go hang?
Yeah. I actually usually drive home.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
Yeah. I mean, speak about a contrast. I don't know how many years ago, 10 years ago, maybe, I went up onto the Devil's Path. I don't remember if it was Sugarloaf or if it was Twin. But I went up there. It was the 29th of November. I went up there. By to noon, I was up on top eating my lunch in my T-shirt. By the time I got down after dark with the headlamp on a good ways down, I was still in my T-shirt.
Wow.
That fall stayed warm for such a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, talking about, the climate change has a big, crazy aspect up on our areas. Is, like years ago, we could always say that there was 20, 30 inches of snow right now. And now there's pretty good, decent amount of snow. Who knows? But then there's rain.
It's melting.
It is.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. Yeah. And then, we talk about the ski areas and that everybody has, if you don't have snowmakers, you're not a ski area nowadays.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And, to say 10 years ago when I 10, 15 years ago when I first started hiking, I didn't need just spikes. I needed snowshoes right away. And it's just, it's crazy to say that, to be out there in a T-shirt and stuff like that. So nothing, Chuck. What do you got? The local Stewarts, I'm guessing?
No, I just make the drive home, coming from Clyde, it's almost an hour and a half, I think, to get to the Helderbergs up here by Eastburn.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to stop and take that extra hour that you're excellent. So Chuck, thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. Let's get together in the future and we'll talk about the volcanic explosions in the Catskills. We totally wiped that out of this conversation. Just to let you know, everybody, there was so much of this that we wiped out.
This was just the flyover of info that Chuck is going to impart.
The preview.
Maybe we'll let him next time pick a topic he wants to do the deep dive, graduate level course on. And we'll just hang on and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, maybe Chuck, you can convince Danny to come on too. You two would both be on at the same time.
Yeah.
Wow. That would be a guess.
4-hour freaking episode.
4 different shows.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, Chuck, really appreciate
you very much.
Yeah, we had a fantastic time.
Ted. Yeah.
Yep.
Great time.
Thanks, Chuck. Happy holidays, buddy.
Yeah. And again, at the Left Bank Cidery on Sunday afternoon, the 2nd of February. I'm going to give a talk that will talk about this stuff and it'll be very good slides of a lot of different things. PowerPoint slides.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll have that in there.
I wrote it down.
Yep.
Yeah.
2225.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe right here, cut it off because I have a couple things I want to bring up.
Yeah. So we'll say our goodbyes and I'll edit all that out. So have a good night, Chuck. Thank you for everything. And I hope we get together in the future.
Yeah. Thank you. I had a great time, you guys.
Hey everyone, I just want to thank you for listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe and throw down a smooth review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any podcast platform that you use. You can also check daily updates of the podcast, hikes, hiking news, and local news on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the official website of the show. Remember this. You gotta just keep on living in the Catskills, man. Livin.
Wicked.